first question.
Hi. So in 2016, you tweeted out a list of 20 people that you called alt-right or alt-right friendly. It included Ron Paul, Pat Buchanan, Ann Coulter, and even Donald Trump. Recently, you gave a speech at Stanford about Nick Fuentes, who you called an alt-right lead influencer. My question is this: it seems like conservatives like you, like Charlie Kirk, like Dan Crenshaw, feel threatened by America First conservatives and America First ideas. Is this why you're smearing them as alt-right, racist, homophobic, and all these other things, instead of actually addressing their ideas and debating them?
So first of all, I'm happy to address any ideas. I'm not happy to debate somebody who has joked about murdering me. That's Fuentes. As far as some of the other people who were mentioned, obviously, when I say alt-right or alt-right adjacent, you'd have to date the tweet. So back in 2016, the fact of the matter is that people like Ron Paul, who has a long history of extremism, if you go back and you read the Ron Paul letters, there's a fair bit of anti-Semitism and racism in them. If you look at Donald Trump, who I said overtly in 2016, flirted with the alt-right, because he did in April and May of 2016. That was a dated tweet. If you're going to date the tweet to 2016, you actually have to date the tweet to 2016, not to yesterday, because things change. Donald Trump, thank God, has forcibly expelled many of the people who are alt-right adjacent, like Steve Bannon, from his administration, which is a very, very good thing. As far as the idea that I'm somehow refusing to debate lower levels of immigration, that is obviously untrue. You can go watch an hour-long interview that I did with the aforementioned Ann Coulter back before 2016 about a book she did on immigration. It's all about lowering levels of immigration. If we're talking about tariffs, happy to have that conversation. I had it with Tucker Carlson. If you're talking about a more isolationist foreign policy, I've had that conversation with many, many people. I said this in my speech at Stanford, which people are willfully ignoring. I'm not arguing that people who hold those views are quote-unquote alt-right. The alt-right is a very specific viewpoint that sees the problem in America as a problem of demographics, that suggests that white nationalism is the answer to that problem, that suggests that the problem with immigration is not a problem of culture or assimilation. The problem in America is a problem of what race the people are who are coming into the country. That is not a point of view that is even within the realm of sort of the paleocon viewpoint. That is a point of view that is actively alt-right. So the alt-right does have a definition, and I tried to be as specific about that definition as possible at Stanford University. If you want to ask a follow-up, that's fine.
Well, first of all, Nick Fuentes is not a white nationalist. He's an America First conservative. He literally has a show every night called America First. You've called Pat Buchanan an anti-Semite and racist for 15 years when Pat Buchanan is a legend of conservatism. You need to stop smearing people who want to reduce immigration and criticize Israel as anti-Semitic and racist, and just accept that they disagree with you, and they simply want to put America first.
Oh no, there are plenty of people who disagree with me and who are critical of Israel and are not anti-Semitic. There are plenty of people who disagree with me on all of the aforementioned issues. I've mentioned some of their names, and that is perfectly fine. If you want to discuss Nick Fuentes specifically, I suggest again you go back and you look at his videos about why 6 million Jews, or what was it, 1 million Jews could not have been burned in the ovens at Auschwitz or at Treblinka. I suggest that you go back and you look at videos of him, actual videos of him doing things like playing Grand Theft Auto, running over an Orthodox Jew, cackling maniacally, and then talking about how he had just killed Ben Shapiro. I refer you to a video last week in which Nick Fuentes pulls out a switchblade and starts randomly jabbing it in the air while talking about me. No, I don't think he's a mainstream conservative, and I think that it is a sin for people to conflate mainstream conservatism with that kind of garbage. Thanks. No, I gave you a couple questions. There are other people in the line.
Hey Ben, my name is Ralph. I'm a huge fan. First of all, I wanted to say to that guy, Nick Fuentes went to the Unite the Right rally where they yelled, "Jews will not replace us." He called to kill all globalists, so he's definitely not a mainstream conservative.
I mean, come on. He called Matt Walsh, who works for me, a Shabbos Goy race trader.
Right. Okay, he's retarded. I watched a bunch of his videos when I heard about him. He's evil. He's evil. Okay. Okay. So I'm a big fan. Okay, sorry. I was recently struggling with the idea of free will, and I was hoping that you could explain it. If you had free will, you could create choices, meaning if your choices weren't influenced by outside causes, then essentially you would be creating effects without causes, right? Which would be impossible. So it would break the laws of causality. So how do you explain free will, and do you think it's theoretically impossible to prove free will exists scientifically?
I think it would be nearly impossible to prove that free will exists scientifically. I think that it's something that you have to take experientially and on faith. because, again, science assumes that there is a cause for every effect. And, again, free will assumes that there are causes with no effect. Right? It's why the biblical idea and the traditional religious and kind of natural law philosophy of human beings, that human beings were made in the image of God, and because human beings were made with the image of God, that actively meant the ability to create ex nihilo, essentially, and make decisions ex nihilo. So is that possible to prove? I don't think that that's possible to prove. I also think that any system built on the idea of lack of free will is bound to collapse in on itself and is completely unworkable as a matter of human action. This is a debate I've had with Sam Harris multiple times, including on my podcast and on his podcast as well. I find it fascinating, but sure, I'm happy to admit that if your assumption is that every cause must have an effect and that every effect must have had a cause, then the idea of you being able to choose freely, in other words, in any given situation, you could choose A or you could choose B, then it's very difficult to substantiate on the basis of just that first premise that you mentioned. Sorry, there's a huge line of questioners.
Short thing.
Well,
Epstein didn't come south.
I'm sorry. I say it every speech now because everybody says that every speech. It's never going to stop being funny. It's not.
Hey Ben, thank you for coming. I just wanted to know, what do you think about the way we choose our senators? Do you think the senators should be chosen by the state legislatures? And what are some ways that we can restore the power of the states to shrink the federal government?
So yeah, I'm an opponent of the 17th Amendment to the Constitution, which suggested direct election of senators. The reason being that the entire goal of the Senate originally was that senators would be answerable to their states. The entire Senate is set up as an institution to grant more power to states in contravention to the House of Representatives, which is directly elected by district and is supposed to not really represent the states themselves. The idea was that state power would be projected up through the Senate by having the state legislatures pick their own senators. They could recall the senators too, right, originally. So you'd send a senator, you didn't like him, you'd recall him by the state legislature. I think that was a much better system. Right now it's very weird that the same population that elects Congress people also elects senators, right? There's no indirect election of senators. So I think that would be, I think it's a good idea to get rid of the 17th Amendment. It's never going to happen, obviously, but I'm very much in favor of it. As far as restoring the balance between the federal government and the state government, that starts by minimizing the power of the federal government in our lives, and that's something I think we're all trying to fight for each and every day in the conservative movement.
So Ben, you were, of course, a man of minute stature. You came from more than, 5'4", 137 pounds. In a system without government providing services like security, conflict resolution, police, I could easily envision a scenario in which you're literally being eaten by larger men as a pallet comes between courses. So now, when clearly in any reality, you rely heavily on direct or indirect third-party physical protection of your life and property, and that happens to be the one government service, the only one that you're vocal in supporting is an absolute necessity. The government exists solely to, quote your words here, protect you from other people. You've said government should provide security and conflict resolution, and that's it. Unstated, just how you arrived at this government should provide formulation. One that necessarily includes you forcing someone else's labor and forcing someone else to pay for it. The fact is there are many people who do just fine in a stateless society, be capable of protecting themselves without government security. And so the thing is, here you are, a rather petite individual, clearly leeching off the government program of law and order, saying others should be forced to pay to protect your life and your property. So my question to you, Ben, is given that tiny fellows like you benefit from this coerced payment, yet you condemn the needs of others to differ from your own and somehow encroaching on your freedoms, just how is this not the height of hypocrisy, and when your entire philosophy of living in government falls apart? Is it not, in truth, only limited to what Ben Shapiro personally needs for himself?
So listen, I enjoy Ben Shapiro's short and petite joke as much as any other person. But a couple of quick things. First of all, just as a matter of fact, I should explain that I do expend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on my own personal security. So if the idea is that I'm leeching off the government, no, I am definitely paying for my own personal security. If the idea is that when it comes to policing, the idea of police is that police is a public good. Okay, the description of a public good in economics is a good that is non-rivalrous and non-excludable, meaning a good that cannot be denied to anybody who is within its purview, and also cannot be excluded for anybody who is within its purview. The fact is that when it comes to leeching, if you were to consider a public good by the amount of what I pay in and what I get out, in terms of taxes, I pay in vastly more than many people who benefit from the services of the police department. But the point of having a police department is that the police department is supposed to protect the community, meaning that they shouldn't be picking and choosing the houses on my street that they protect, because that has bleed-over effects and externalities, including the safety level on my street. So, no, I do not think that it is me disproportionately drawing from the system to suggest that there be public policing. I think that it's a creative argument. It's a new one. I'll give you that, and I'll try to work out more if that's what you're asking me to do. I'll try to clean it up, bro. Okay, next. I'm sorry, we have literally like 50 people in this line.
Hi, Ben. Thanks for a great speech. So, as a conservative, I think that if we're going to win the war of ideas, we need to adopt some more nuanced views of some issues that are important to people instead of being dismissive, which I think we are sometimes. For example, I agree that white privilege, which you call a myth, is not this all-encompassing legal barrier to progress for minorities. However, we all have unconscious biases based on things like race, age, and gender. So if there's a tendency to prefer white over black in some area, like deciding between job candidates, then wouldn't that be an example of not legal but de facto white privilege? And if that's the case, then don't we all need to check our many privileges by being more aware of the good things that we have, which we ourselves did not earn? And don't we also need to check our biases by trying to do better at judging each person individually and not by their group identity?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't call that white privilege. I'd just call that trying to be a good person. I think the problem with the term white privilege is the unspoken assumption, which is that if you are white, you have somehow benefited massively by dint of your skin color in the United States. And that is a proposition that on the individual level, I absolutely deny. I think there are a lot of white people who do not benefit from the fact that they are white in the United States. I think there are legal policies in place like affirmative action that affirmatively actually cut against white people in the United States when they don't exist in the same way with regard to legal discrimination, like legally enforced discrimination against other groups. When it comes to the idea that we should all treat each other as individuals and we should obviously examine our own internal biases, of course I agree with that. I mean, I thought that used to just be called decency. The problem with weaponizing the term white privilege is, again, the suggestion that if you are a white person and you've been successful, the reason that you've been successful is due to this unspoken privilege and bias inside our institutions. Again, that's too vague to do anything about. I've said this 1,000 times, really, almost in every speech, that if you want to point out to me a case where somebody is being a racist so I can get on the same side as you and then fight alongside you against that racism, that's fine. But if you want to go ghost hunting against things like white privilege, I can't. It doesn't have a specific enough definition or an action plan for me to do anything about it. So there's really nothing I can do about it until you cite for me the exact instance of something going wrong, and then we can fight about it together. Specificity is actually the friend to action. Vagary is the enemy of action. And it feels like in today's politics, vagary is what people cite because that allows them to be angry at other people without actually recommending an action that's useful.